Life on Earth. Welcome to Life on Earth. Welcome to Life on Earth. Hello, you good people, and welcome. Welcome to Life on Earth, our Thursday podcast.
And Merry Christmas Eve Eve.
Merry Christmas Eve Eve. It's the eve before Christmas. And we're glad you're here. Join us in the chat. If you're watching on YouTube, please chime in. We want to hear back from you. We read them all. If you put in a super chat, you can support the Ayn Rand Center UK as well, and your comments will stand out, akin to a certain other professional podcaster that we know. That would be great to see. Oh, are we skipping a little bit? Hope our internet's okay. Folks, let us know if the internet's skipping on you. In any event, it is 2 days before Christmas, and I can't resist stealing a topic.
Oh.
A little theft before Christmas. It sounds like the premise of a bad Christmas movie, or maybe a good Christmas movie.
I think you must be the Lord of Misrule.
The Lord of Misrule. If you know your historical Christmases, Christmas used to be much more mischievous than it is now. Well, followers of the Ayn Rand Center UK's YouTube channel know, if you follow as close as I did, that on Monday, they announced the show, and it was great. You know, Mark Pellegrino and Don Watkins, Nikos Satyrakopoulos, and 4 people who were on. It's sad I'm forgetting the 4th person, but great show topic was announced too. The 10 things that will happen when objectivism wins.
Yes.
It was great. And so I brought it up ahead of time, just like I'm sure you do for this show. You put the YouTube up there, and the man behind the scenes who does this ahead of time, so you can just have it sitting there, and then the show starts. But half an hour before the show was to start on Monday, I see the YouTube screen refresh. It kind of flashed for a second, comes back up, and suddenly the show topic is 10 books that need to be written from the perspective of objectivism. I thought, oh, that's an interesting show topic. And they did. They had a great discussion about 10 books that really need to be written. And nobody better to talk about that than Don Watkins and Nikos, because they both recently released books. And Don has his new book coming out, The Self-Made Manifesto. That's going to be great. So who better to say, hey, if there are still books that need to be written, here they are. Mm-hmm. But I was a little disappointed.
Kind of a bit of a change of plans there.
It was a great discussion. It was a worthy discussion. No fault on the speakers, but I kind of wanted to hear, well, what are 10 things that are going to happen when objectivism finally wins?
Yes.
I let it go because I'm that kind of guy. Well, but
I have some ideas on that.
I do too. Ooh. And I did. And I wanted to talk about them, but I let it go. I let it roll off my back. Is that great or what? This boy can cope. But then yesterday, December 22nd, Tom Bowden at the Ayn Rand Institute puts up a post on the ARI website, what Ayn Rand wanted most for Christmas. And it's real short because it was a postcard sized. What happened was she received an inquiry from the American Way magazine, and they wanted a postcard sized answer to the question, what do you want for Christmas? And it's in the Ayn Rand archives. She actually replied, she sent them an answer, and her answer was this. And you should go to ARI's website and read this because Tom talks more about it. But her answer was, what I want most for Christmas is a rational society. But it won't come at Christmas, and I will have to wait for it quite a bit longer. Unquote. There's no record that her answer was actually published. And there's a cute story about how it was included by her administrative assistant, a note saying, if you publish, please be sure to publish verbatim. Don't change anything. Of course, we all know Ayn Rand had been through that. So a charming story, except her answer, what I want most for Christmas is a rational society, but it won't come at Christmas, and I will have to wait for it quite a bit longer.
Yeah.
Well, that took me right back to Monday. So I decided.
What did you decide?
I decided that 2 days before Christmas, today, Thursday, December 23rd, 2021, here on the Ayn Rand Center UK channel, if I can't hear that discussion, I'm going to have that discussion.
All right, let's do it.
So let's do it. Join me in the chat. Your answer to the question, what will be in the happily ever after? Title I gave the show for today, and they lived happily ever after, but occasionally somebody has the clever idea of writing a book or releasing a film actually answering, well, but what does that look like? What actually happened when they lived happily ever after? So I'd love to see your answers in the chat. If you want to support the channel, you could make it a super chat, but either way, put in your answer in the chat. Jeff Bannister, incidentally, already in for $2 Canadian. Thank you for that. Sends out a hey you. We appreciate it. Thank you. And the first thing that came up for me when I thought, well, in this ideal society, in this objectivist society, this rational society Ayn talked about, first thing I thought of was, read my lips. No new taxes.
That's the first thing you thought of?
First thing I thought of. I don't know why that was foolish. What am I talking about? Some of the listeners out there may be too young to even recognize, to know who said that. Not George W. Bush, but
George H.W. Bush.
George H.W. Bush. George Herbert Walker Bush said that back in, and this is what sunk him when he said back in 1990. We're not, after, the late 80s, the economy went on a roller coaster. By 1990, there was trouble. And people were saying, you got to raise taxes. It's the only way to stave off inflation. Talk to Joe Biden about that. See what he's going to do. If he's got to read my lips. And George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker went on and said, when they asked him, look, I'm going to say this as plain and simple as I can. Just read my lips. No new taxes.
Read my lips. I am a liar.
Of course, we all know what happened. There were new taxes, and he got thrown out of office after just one term. How do you, after the Ronald Reagan administration and all their successes for all their ups and downs and scandals and stuff, still, who's been better than that since? How do you get elected after Ronald Reagan, having been his vice president, and get thrown out after 4 years? Among other things, you promise there will be no new taxes. And then Bill Clinton, of all people, comes up and complete shyster, salesman, charlatan. But the current president was also a liar, so no advantage in that regard. Anyway, number one, first thing that will happen, objectivist, rational society, the coming utopia that will probably take at least 5 years, but when it happens, did I say 5?
5-year plan.
Maybe that's a 5-year plan. Maybe that's a little over optimistic. Number one, read my lips. No new taxes. There will be other methods. It's not going to be that hard when the government is only 10% the size it is now. When you take those few areas in which you can impose fees without there being legislative inequalities, for example, you can't impose a fee to vote. You can't impose a fee for police protection. Some things have got to be equal whether people are throwing money in the pot or not. But there are countless ways in which the government can raise revenue without it affecting objective law. Number two, the number two thing that will happen in the ideal society that's right around the corner, read my lips, 5 more years. Number two, no more regulations, no more barriers of entry of new business. It's hard to overstate just how much regulation dampens the economy. So toward the end, when I talk about how utopian things will be, you've got to think, if you've never watched any of John Stossel's specials on regulation, for example, the tax law, which is a stack of paper this large.
Yeah.
But the other business regulations, again, barriers to entry, what it takes to open a nail salon in California, what it takes to enter any business, and then the ways in which you are regulated after that to keep you from running your business, from expanding your business. Regulations, nearly all regulations are improper and will be repealed. Any regulations which are proper will be folded into established law. People will start more ventures, people will take more risks, and they'll sometimes fail, but they will generally succeed and on levels previously unknown. Number one, no new taxes. Number two, no more regulations. Number three, no more publicly funded government-run schools. So competition will mean very few lousy schools in general. Granted, you'll have the dollar store level of school. Those will be out there. They'll still be better. If you don't think they'll be better than our present public schools, just read the essay, The Comprachicos. James Valiant recently did an episode on it, and he's doing a follow-up episode with Lisa Van Dam. Watch either of those or just read the original article in The New Left, The Anti-Industrial Revolution. Pretty sure that's the anthology that's in. It's heartbreaking. It's infuriating. And any of you who attended grade school in a public school, if it was a good school, you might not share this, but I attended an average public school in Southfield, Michigan, back when Southfield, Michigan was kind of a fancy city to live in. Nightmare, disaster, nothing at all like what it should have been. I would gladly have traded in 4 years in a Dollar General for the 4 years that I spent in high school. No more publicly funded schools. Number 4, when objectivism wins, no more war. Now you might think, well, but there will still be bad actors. China will still be out there. Things will still be crazy in the Middle East. North Korea will still be out there. When I say no more war, of course, what we mean is specifically no more unjustified self-sacrificial wars.
Mhm.
There will be wars of self-defense, but bad actors will get slapped down quickly and decisively, and that will make any other bad actors think twice. What people don't realize is we've already had some success in that regard. For all of our bad decisions in foreign policy, it could be worse. And I mentioned that just to make the point, it also could be much, much better.
All right, what's number 5?
Number 5, and then I'm going to stop when we get halfway through because I've got to read some of these chat messages. Number 5, race, gender, and ethnicity will be like flavors. Race should be like spice. And spices have nothing to do with ethics or politics. Ethnicity is fun.
Yep.
And interesting.
Should be like sprinkles or jimmies, as they say.
Yes, jimmies. We're on a UK channel. I guess we have to say jimmies. They don't know what sprinkles are. Sprinkles just sounds wrong. A heterogeneous society is an interesting society.
Yeah.
The great thing about diversity is that it's not important. It's just interesting. It's just fun. In fact, when you try to make it important, well, we all know about CRT and woke and what people are trying to do in the name of diversity. These are spices. These are flavors. I love women. I love men in a different way. I love races. I love ethnicity. I love Chinese food. It's great to use a stereotype that won't offend anyone, but the point is, ethnicity is a beautiful thing if it's not important. Spices. So I'll stop there after number 5. Take a moment to go through the chat because we do have several interesting comments, a lot of thank yous, and a lot of Merry Christmases, and very, very much appreciated. Tazy says, I was educated privately. Hope no one holds that against me. Yes, we're jealous, we're envious. We think you need to be cut down like the tall poppies in Australia because you have an unfair advantage. Jennifer says puppies. Well, that's exactly what I want to hear. I have to go back in the chat to see what that's in response to. Good friend Steve is in the chat for $19.99, says, Merry Christmas. Thank you for that. A big contribution goes to the channel instead of us, but that is as we wish it because Amy and I are independently wealthy. We want the money to support the Ayn Rand Center UK, and that's why we do too. Thank you for that, Steve. What else do we have in the chat that I've missed?
Oh, Marius says that he has to drive, but he says, all my love to you too. So
we often catch
wonderful.
Marius on the road, but definitely appreciate the way that he listens anyway. And hopefully you don't get in an accident over that or run into a deer.
No, don't do that.
Don't run into, if you're anywhere where there are deer, much less reindeer. I only mention that because my poor daughter has struck a deer in her car this fall. Twice.
3 weeks apart.
Can you imagine you run into a deer? It almost totals your car. The car looks sad. Still runs, so she's still driving it until she makes a decision about replacing it. But imagine that happening. Almost totals your car. It's a total mess. And then you fix up the car enough to keep driving it. And then it happens again 3 weeks later. Sudden deer, they side of the road, run into the road, too fast to stop. Crazy. I guess that's a good thing she didn't go out and buy a new car right away. Because, two cars
That would
destroyed.
not have been great. Yes, Steve, thank you so very much for the lovely contribution of 1999 US. He says, Merry Christmas.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Outstanding. So what happens when they live happily ever after? We said, well, no new taxes, no new regulations, no public schools, no more war, and race, gender, and ethnicity become fun again. Optional. Number 6, nature. When we think about the utopia, the future, the AI, the singularity, the amazing new society, or the dystopia, whichever you believe, the one thing we always think is nature is going to be wiped out. But nature will be privatized and commoditized.
I like that.
Nature will be protected by the only right that truly exists, by individual rights, which includes property rights. Nature is enormously beautiful, incredibly inspiring, crucially invigorating, and dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nature to be commanded must be obeyed.
That's right. Thank you, Isaac Newton, whose birthday we celebrate in 2 days.
I thought that was Francis Bacon.
Oh, you're right. You're right. Francis. Well, we find out when Bacon was.
But happy
born.
Birthday, Isaac Newton.
And the world needs more bacon. Yes. It's because I've been seeing the Isaac Newton posts.
Yes.
That great man was born to a virgin mother and went on to change the world on December 25th. That's absolutely true.
Oh, and James in the chat, James Valiant, one of our favorite people on earth.
Oh my God, the smartest host on Ayn Rand Center UK.
He says, stupendous prosperity, greater psychological health, peace on earth, and goodwill to men. Wonderful.
Damn right. He's practically stolen the end of my notes for today.
Darn tootin'.
Which is perfect, which is absolutely as it should be. So number 6, nature will be privatized because nature is valuable and it is dangerous and brutal, but it's fragile, it's irreplaceable, and it's enormously valuable. Once nature becomes property, it's your rights as a property owner. It will be respected in a rational society. Nature is going to be great. We used to use massive amounts of land for farming.
Mm-hmm.
We use 10% of that now. Yeah. 10% of the land we used to do. And what happened? What crops did we put on that land? A lot of it was used to plant the crop of trees. Oh, but that's not old growth forest. Yes, that's right. Things change. Now we have new growth forests, trees that can be harvested. In fact, we have a real Christmas tree in the studio right over there.
Yes.
It's going to be great. Number 6, nature will be privatized and protected. Number 7, medicine. This is just crazy. You could do a whole show on this. Someday we will. In a rational society, in a coming objectivist society, once we all live happily ever after, medicine and related fields like DNA modification and restoration and design, DNA restoration are going to be amazing. And we're halfway there. Half of these things are already being done, but what's possible once the technology is fully unshackled and fully developed is going to be both life-saving and life-changing. In the past, I've said, the extinction of a species, we talked about nature, the extinction of a species can be a very sad loss, but unless it's enough of a loss for people to choose to invest their own time and energy and resources, their money, to preserve it, and that's just too bad. Some things are going to go extinct. But with DNA technologies, we will be reinvigorating at-risk species. Mm-hmm. We will be repopulating at-risk populations. And we will be reviving extinct species.
Wow.
The technology is more than halfway there. This is going to happen. So yes, number 7, medicine is going to be amazing. Health is going to be amazing. Number 8, mm-hmm. prostitution and gambling and drinking and drugs
Drugs. Give me drugs.
should and will be legalized. The application of these activities in relation to minors will follow other established law in regard to minors. But victimless crime is an oxymoron. It's either victimless or it's a crime. And adults will be allowed to act like adults, even when that means acting self-destructively.
You know, there's really an excellent story on this front with regard to drugs and drug use, and that in New York, New York has the first supervised drug injection sites open now. And this has been going on in places like Portugal and places, you know, in other parts of Europe to great success, where people can go and safely, you know, basically get their fix for drugs and simultaneously lift the stigma off of them, keep them from being jailed, and actually get help from there. I mean, it's so amazing.
Yep. And I know people who say, well, but doesn't that strengthen the state's role in it? And the best I can tell, this is an interim step. We never thought we were going to see legalized marijuana.
Right.
I hate the stuff. I didn't want to see legalized marijuana. Well, on principle, I did. Point is, we never thought it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And it did. And it's great. And I do not see suddenly the streets are filled with irresponsible people smoking dope all day.
Right.
I know people in my personal circle, people I would never have imagined, who have come to me and said, I am using an edible to manage anxiety.
Right.
That they're using cannabis at bedtime, for example, that allows them to deal with issues that they're finding a challenge. Strictly medicinal. There aren't people going out and getting high, although there's that too. And by what right do you tell somebody they can't? So yes, number 8, prostitution, gambling, drinking, drugs, victimless crimes will once again become an oxymoron. Number 9, goodwill. See, we're going to jump to what James Valiant said. Goodwill will be the order of the day. The 1800s, the late 1800s, will have nothing on the world to come. I love the mentions of Jurassic Park in the chat. It's coming. It's not that far off. What did they just find a dinosaur egg? The crazy thing is that
it's fossilized.
Given a certain, well, that's the thing. Given, they're encased in amber or some other preserving medium, because of course you can't use DNA from 1 million years ago. It's not preserved, except sometimes it turns out it is. It's a crazy thing about DNA is it holds up. Anyway, number 9, goodwill will be the order of the day. The late 1800s have nothing on the world to come, because in the late 1800s, they did not have a fully grounded, bulletproof defense of reason. It was a more rational society. It was a society that respected the mind, respected technology, respected progress, and yet they still hadn't fully gotten out of slavery. They still hadn't given women the right to vote, much less and 1,000 other forms of gender equality that didn't exist. No, I don't mean state-imposed gender equality. I mean just respecting women and their minds and their capabilities. And, forget about respect for different sexual preferences and activities. Goodwill will be the order of the day in the coming better society.
Yes.
Everything that was magnificent back then, but implicit, will be explicit. The so-called Gilded Age, it won't be gilded. It's not just going to be gold leaf, gold plated with, all sorts of whatever people blamed for pollution and poverty and things that were happening. No, it's going to be gold down to the core, or at least iron underneath. It's going to be solid. It's going to be substantive. It's going to be not on the backs of slowly developing society, but on the backs of the world's strongest ideas. It will be like the late 1800s, except people will know it and they will know why.
Yeah, that's really good.
So number one, no new taxes. Number two, no regulations. Number three, no public schools. Number four, no war. Number five, race, gender, and ethnicity will be great. They'll be fun again. They will be spices of life. Number six, nature will be privatized and protected. Number seven, medicine and fields like DNA research will just take off into directions you can't imagine. Number eight, victimless crimes simply go away or dealt with rationally. Number nine, goodwill will be the order of the day. And number 10, I don't know. And neither do you. Because I know this much. Once the basic principles of objectivism have become the dominant cultural framework, the world's going to become a natural, technological, artistic utopia, unimaginable, beyond our imagination. You know, the communists and the other irrationalists, the fascists and the dictators have given the word utopia a bad name. Maybe we need a better word, but it's going to be amazing. And yes, we will. Maybe it'll take some time. Maybe they will. We will live happily ever after.
Yes. Yeah, I have a number 11. I can take this to 11, folks.
Take it to 11. If you haven't seen the film This Is Spinal Tap yet, if that reference isn't meaningful
This
to you,
goes to 11.
it's time.
But before we do that, I would
yes.
like to mention
Yes.
our support and your support, your potential support of the Ayn Rand Center UK.
Ayn Rand Center UK.
You can become a member. You just go to their website, which I'm sure somebody will post
in
into
the
the chat.
AynRandCenter.co.uk.
A link there.
Center spelled with an RE at the end.
Yes, and it's a wonderful, wonderful service that it's a wonderful community. If you, this is a community that you want to support, you know, people think, oh, objectivism, it's just some solitary niche group or however. No.
I think for a lot of us who discovered Ayn Rand, we spent a certain amount of time like that, feeling like, am I the only rational person am I the only one who gets that? Okay, there's a few kind of popular people you can find on the internet now, but it still feels like, what are there, like 10 of us or 20?
Yeah, one of our bumper stickers on our car says, objectivist, you're not the only one.
And that bumper sticker has brought us some of our closest friends.
Yeah, actually.
Bumper stickers can work.
And so go there, become a member, support us, support this community that's been building and building for the last over a year now. And this is a part of where it all starts here.
Yes, and in the chat has a few interesting comments, and then she quotes Ayn Rand: "The world you desire can be won. It exists. It's real. It's possible. It's yours." Takes me back to an old newsletter. I don't know if this is the same Ann who used to run that newsletter, that was focused on positivity. And there have been a few of them. I miss some of the old newsletters and the old, for example, Betsy Spicer's Cybernet had a feature that somewhat inspired this episode. She said, "You'll know objectivism is winning when," and then she would point out something that is rational in society that might have been inspired by objectivism, but it turns out they're actually things that are actually happening. I think more broadly about society becoming more rational, because I think that opens the door for these ideas. Jeff, incidentally, is in the super chat again. He is posting more dollars to ARC UK and says, "A world where we, quote, don't hurt people and don't take their stuff," unquote. That seems obvious. That seems, of course, you shouldn't hurt people and you shouldn't take their stuff.
Right.
You shouldn't make people do things they don't want to do, and you shouldn't.
But try to turn that around and assert the positive, assert the value orientation to that. And you'd say, where you value other people, value yourself, and creates new stuff and trade that new stuff and actually have good win-win relationships with people, goodwill toward men, as it were. And now here is my number 11. This is how it's going to look. And this is basically, I went back to the, if you've heard of, Ayn Rand explained her philosophy of objectivism while standing on one foot.
Objectivism while standing on one foot.
Someone challenged her to do that. And she makes it really quite clear, and she makes it pretty accessible. Honestly, Ayn Rand is the most accessible philosopher out there. Her ideas are so well organized and so easy to follow. Not easy all the time and everything like that, but for a person like myself, like you and the audience, like Robert, who won't back down from any intellectual challenge. In other words, if there has been a challenge in my life where I feel a bit lost about, or I need some kind of some kind of perspective, some kind of wisdom and explanation, I don't just give up. I don't just throw my hands up in the air and say, well, philosophy is nonsensical. And I can't know what my thoughts are behind my feelings and emotions. No, as a matter of fact, I think that there's and I didn't write anything out on this, but I'd love to talk more about this. But in terms of psychology, the advances in psychology in the last 20 years, cognitive behavioral therapy and many other excellent ideas out there, that's very much has given people a framework to basically love themselves, to know themselves, to love themselves, to not be afraid to understand their own thinking, to not be afraid to introspect, to not be afraid to ask the hard questions of themselves, and to have the confidence to find those answers. And I really think that, our 5-year plan is going to entail more people, as they are now reaching out in terms of psychology, more people are going to reach out in terms of philosophy. And they're going to, see Ayn Rand standing on one foot. They're going to understand, what she says about metaphysics being objective reality, about epistemology meaning reason, what reason is, and that they actually have that power and they're empowered with that. The ethics of self-interest and capitalism and politics. And, she did actually, I just want to read this. The metaphysics correlates to nature to be commanded must be obeyed, or wishing won't make it so. Epistemology of reason correlates to you can't have your cake and eat it too. The self-interest and ethics correlates to man is an end in himself. And finally, capitalism and politics correlates to give me liberty or give me death. Well, now those are all very pithy quotes and everything. And people may look at that and say, I know nothing of philosophy. I know nothing about any of this. This is all too hard to untangle. Well, I really think that in the next 5-10 years, more people are going to, because of Ayn Rand Center UK, because of so many objectivists going out and speaking up and making videos and talking, that's going to be a lot easier for a lot of people to actually use to be confident in their own reasoning abilities to figure out the hard questions of their life. And that is how I see the future, this utopia. People talk about these things. They will talk more and more about these things, just as we are today, just as you are today. There it is.
Excellent. And Tazy is very active in the chat and has gone all over the map in regard to what the next year looks like for her. And that's good. That's good. Even though some of it seems unique to, I understand your unique situation, but obviously you've been working hard and you've got great plans. Good things are going to happen. As we come up on the new year, this seemed like the right time to talk about the future. As Ayn Rand suggested, what I want most for Christmas is a rational society, but it won't come at Christmas, and I will have to wait quite a bit longer. It could be quite a bit longer before we have a rational society, but I am very much looking forward to coming better days, and I hope everybody is already thinking about next year, especially after Christmas when we have a week to plan out what our next year is going to look like. Here on Life on Earth, my plan is simply to keep getting a little better at this all the time
Mhm.
and keep making it fun for folks to join us on Thursday afternoons / evenings / mornings, depending on where you are at. And so what I want to do is say thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for supporting the channel. Tazy is in for $2. Also, Lee is in for £1.49. Thank you for that.
Thank you, guys.
That's interesting. Tazy's in for $2, but Lee is in for pounds. I would have thought Tazy would be in for pounds too.
That's interesting.
You never know where people are this time of year, whether you're in a place with pounds, euros, or dollars, whatever it is, it's all good. Thank you so much for joining us. Next week,
Mhm.
if we have an episode, I don't know, we may take a week off, maybe not. We'll see. I have to talk to the Lord and Emperor of all things and the producer behind the scenes, find out if we're going to be working.
I was going to say community organizer, but then I thought, oh, that's sort of insulting. But no, it really isn't.
Depends on the kind of community organizer you're talking about.
Oh, and one thing before we wrap up, Robert, we
Yes.
need to answer this question from Anne. Is there one video we should recommend to new people new to the philosophy of objectivism?
That is a
That's
great question. And you would think I would have an answer in my back pocket for that. What video comes to mind for you?
Oh my golly. It depends on what their context is,
I mean,
depends on,
kind of
you know.
The obvious one would be the 76 speech, from which we took the name of this show. The
Yes.
1976 Ayn Rand speech before the not the Ford Hall Forum speech, but the one before the U.S. Marine graduates at West Point.
Yes.
She was invited to speak to the graduating class.
Yeah, philosophy who needs it.
She gave a talk called Philosophy Who Needs It. And she talked about philosophy throughout. And then she says toward the end, I'm talking to you about the power of philosophy to give you a general idea of it. But if you ask what my specific purpose is, it's to sell you on ideas in general and my philosophy in particular.
Yes.
And she says, my philosophy, formally, I call it objectivism. But informally, I call it a philosophy for living on Earth. Which is why I can't resist having a show where the focus is living on Earth. And that's why I couldn't resist stealing the title of an existing show out there, a nature series produced in England by Richard Attenborough called Life on Earth. Eventually, I'll rename the show so I don't get in trouble for copyright. But that's why the show's called Life on Earth with Robert and Amy Nasir. See, with that other guy, that Attenborough guy, you know, we don't want to get confused with that little thing that he does. Ha. And, oh, sorry, distracted by the chat again. I love the chat.
It's great.
But with all that said, again, the top 10 things that are going to happen when objectivism wins the day. I hope that you agree with me. I hope you realize just how revolutionary not just this philosophy is, not just what it's doing for your own life, but all the ways in which it has already saved us from collapse. I don't think people realize how much has happened behind the scenes because Ayn Rand kept people from going completely off the rails. A little bit of influence this philosophy has had has been enormous in the broader context of things, but also what the future is going to look like. The future is going to be amazing.
It is.
The future in a rational society, life on Earth, it's going to be magnificent. Will it happen in our lifetimes? Depends on ours. Some of you are young. You'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
Will it happen in my lifetime? I'm optimistic, but the short answer is nobody knows.
I'm just going to say partially.
Partially. Well, that's the bigger answer, is that, again, we've seen bits and pieces of it. We've seen individuals, for example, in the objectivist community who've done amazing things and have lived amazing lives and have inspired the rest of us to live better.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to keep, even if we don't see an objectivist society in our lifetimes, you're going to keep seeing bits and pieces. You're going to keep seeing impact. You're going to keep seeing ways in which these ideas, this philosophy, this commitment to reason has had a massive impact, both personally and in the broader context. And in that regard, and with that said, I would like to wish each and every one of you, and I do mean you, the person listening right now, you know who you are. I would like to wish you the best of holidays, a Merry Christmas, and an outstanding New Year. 2020 is going to be great.
2022.
Excuse me, 2022. It's the palindrome thing from yesterday. I've got my numbers all mixed up.
Just call it 22.
2022 is going to be, it's going to be the best year yet.
Yes, it will.
And I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to doing it with you. Thank you very much. Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.